Probability questions can feel like an absolute minefield. 1 minute, you're flipping a coin. The next minute, the question throws a word like or, given that, or independent at you. And suddenly the maths completely changes. The secret to acing these questions isn't memorizing a list of formula. It's learning how to decode the language so you know exactly what the question is really asking you to do. In this video, we're going to look at a series of exam-style probability questions, and I'll show you the exact step-by-step methods to solve these. So let's start with the first one. In a group of 60 students, 28 study French, 25 study Spanish, and 10 study both. In part A, we're asked to draw a Venn diagram to represent this information. In part B, we're asked to find the probability of the union between those studying French and those studying Spanish. And then in part C, we're asked to find the probability of the intersection of those studying French and those not studying Spanish. And for part D, a student is chosen at random from those that study French, and we're asked to find the probability that they also study Spanish. If you'd like to play along, pause the video now. So our Venn diagram contains two intersecting circles drawn within a rectangle. One circle is marked F for French, and the other circle is marked S for Spanish. So let's start plugging the numbers into the Venn diagram. So we'll begin with those that study both French and Spanish. So the intersection of the Venn diagram. And we're told that 10 students study both. So we'll place the number 10 in this area. And then we're told that 28 students study French. Now we've already got 10 in the intersection. So we need to subtract 10 from 28. And this gives us 18. And these 18 represent those students that exclusively study French. Next, we're told that 25 students study Spanish. Now we already know that 10 students study French and Spanish. So we need to subtract the number 10 from 25. And this gives us 15. So we place the number 15 in this area of the Venn diagram. And this represents those students that exclusively study Spanish. And finally, if we add up the numbers 18, 10, and 15, we get 43. And if we subtract this from the total number of students in the group, which is 60, we get 17. And this represents the number of students who study neither French nor Spanish. And this number is placed outside the two circles, but within the rectangle. And for part B, we need to find the probability that a randomly selected student studies either French or Spanish or both, which means the probability of the union of those studying French and Spanish, which is represented by the green shaded region on the Venn diagram. So if we sum these numbers, we have 18 plus 10 plus 15 and divide by 60, so the total sample space, we get a probability of 43 divided by 60. In part C, we want to find the probability of F intersection S prime, which is the probability that a randomly selected student studies French and not Spanish. And so we're looking for the common part of these two groups. So those that study French is represented by the green shaded region on the Venn diagram. And those in the not Spanish group are represented by the green shaded region on the Venn diagram. So the common point, or the intersection of these two groups, is shown by the green shaded region here on the Venn diagram. And that group has 18 students. So our probability is 18 divided by the total sample space, which is 60, and this gives us a probability of 3/10. In part D, we're told that a student is randomly selected from the group that study French, and we want to find the probability that they also study Spanish. So decoding this is the probability that a student studies Spanish given that they definitely study French. So this is conditional probability, and we have a formula for this. It's the probability that a student studies French and Spanish divided by the probability that the student studies French. So on our Venn diagram, the probability that a student studies French and Spanish, so the intersection of French and Spanish is shown by the green shaded region. So we see that there are 10 students that study French and Spanish. So if we divide 10 by our sample space of 60, we get this probability. And the probability that a student studies French is shown by the green shaded region on the Venn diagram. So in this region, we have two numbers, 18 and 10. So if we sum these, we get 28, and divide this by the total in our sample space, which is 60, we get a probability of 28 over 60. And simplifying this, we get 5 divided by 14. And this is the probability that a student studies Spanish given that they study French. If you'd like to support the channel, you can now become a member to get early access to every video. To join, you can use the link displayed here, or just hit the join button right below the video. In our next question, we're told that a fair coin is tossed and a fair die is rolled. The first part of the question, part A, asks us to find the probability of getting a head and a number greater than 4. And part B asks us to find the probability of getting a head or a number greater than 4, or both. If you'd like to play along, pause the video now. And so for part A, the probability that when we flip a coin, we get a head is 1 chance in 2. This probability is 1/2. And to find the probability of rolling a die and getting a number greater than 4, we have to look at the various outcomes. So when we roll a die, we can get an outcome of 1 to 6. So the only numbers greater than 4 will be 5 and 6. So there are 2 chances in 6 of rolling a number greater than 4. And those numbers are 5 and 6. So the probability of rolling a number greater than 4 is equal to 1/3. And for this question, it's important to understand that rolling a die and flipping a coin are independent events. The one event does not affect the other. So the probability of flipping a head and, when we roll a die, getting a number greater than 4 is the probability of flipping a head multiplied by the probability of rolling a number greater than 4. So we know that the probability of flipping a head is 1/2, and we know that the probability of getting a number greater than 4 when we roll a die is 1/3. So our total probability is 1/2 multiplied by 1/3, and this gives us a probability of 1/6. And for part B, we're asked to find the probability of getting a head or a number greater than 4, or both. If we translate this, this is asking us to find the probability of getting a head unioned with rolling a number greater than 4 on the die. And for this, we can use the addition rule. And we have a formula for this. It's the probability of getting a head plus the probability of rolling a number greater than 4 minus the probability of getting a head and rolling a number greater than 4. And we subtract this probability to avoid double counting. Let's quickly look at why we make this subtraction using a Venn diagram. So we have 2 circles, flipping ahead and rolling a number greater than 4. And so flipping ahead is represented by the green shaded region on the Venn diagram. And rolling a number greater than 4 is represented by this green shaded region on the Venn diagram. Note that the intersection of the two, represented by this green shaded region, appeared in both scenarios, and so we have to subtract one of them to avoid double counting. So to calculate the probability, we need the probability of a head plus the probability of rolling a number greater than 4 minus the probability of flipping a head and rolling a number greater than 4. And we know these probabilities from part A. So the probability of flipping a head is 1/2 plus probability of rolling a number greater than 4 is 1/3 minus the probability of flipping a head and rolling a number greater than 4 is 1/6. And this gives us a total probability of 2/3. So the probability of getting a head or a number greater than 4 or both is 2/3. And we can verify this probability by looking at all the different possible outcomes. When we flip a coin and we roll a die, the different outcomes would be flipping a head and rolling 1 to 6 on the die, or flipping a tail and rolling 1 to 6 on a die. So that's a total of 12 possible outcomes. And if we look at the outcomes that satisfy this probability, we have flipping a head and rolling 1 through 6 on the die, and flipping a tail and rolling 5 or 6 on the die. So there are 8 possible outcomes that satisfy this. And so we have 8 chances in 12, which gives us a probability of 2/3. And for our third question, we're told that a bag contains 5 red counters and 3 blue counters. 2 counters are drawn at random, one after another, without replacement. And part A asks us to draw a tree diagram to show all possible outcomes with probabilities on each branch. Part B asks us to find the probability that both counters are red. And part C asks us to find the probability that the 2 counters are different colours. So let's start with our tree diagram. There are 8 counters in the bag, and we know that 5 are red. So the probability of selecting a red counter at random is 5/8. And 3 of the counters are blue, so the probability of selecting a blue counter at random is 3/8. Now here's the important part. Once we've taken the first counter out, we don't replace it. So now there's only 7 counters in the bag. And if the first counter was red, there are only 4 red counters in the bag. So the chances of selecting a red counter a second time is 4/7. And the chance of selecting a blue counter if the first counter was red is 3/7, as there are still 3 counters in the bag. And if the first counter was blue, the chance of selecting a red counter would be 5/7, as there are still 5 red counters in the bag. And the chances of it being blue would be 2/7, as there are now only 2 blue counters in the bag. And so for part B, the probability that both counters coming out of the bag are red would be this probability multiplied by this probability. And this gives us a total probability of 5/8 multiplied by 4/7, which is equal to 20 divided by 56, which further simplifies to 5 divided by 14. And for part C, we want to find the probability that the 2 counters are different colours. So we could have the scenario where the first counter drawn is red, so this branch here, and the second counter drawn out is blue, so this branch here. Or we could have the scenario where the first counter drawn is blue, this branch here, and then the second counter is red, so this branch here. So we have the probability that the first counter is blue and the second counter is red, or, so we add the probabilities, the probability that the first counter is red and the second is blue. So now we can pick these probabilities off the tree diagram. So the probability of blue followed by red is 3/8 multiplied by 5/7. So 3/8 multiplied by 5/7 plus the probability of blue following red is 5/8 and 3/7. So 5/8 multiplied by 3/7. And this gives 15/56 plus 15/56, which gives a total probability of 15/28. For question 4, we're given a survey of 100 people, and it recorded whether they owned a car and whether they owned a bike, and the data is shown in the table. Part A of the question asks us to find the probability that a randomly selected person owns a bike. Part B asks us to find the probability that a randomly selected person owns a bike, given that they own a car. And part C asks us to determine, showing our workings, whether owning a car and owning a bicycle are independent. So let's start by plotting this information on a Venn diagram. It's a 2-circle Venn diagram. One circle represents the car owners, and the other circle represents the bicycle owners. Outside of the circle and within the rectangle represents those people that don't own a car or a bike. So let's start filling in the numbers. So from the table, those that own a car and a bicycle total 18. And this is the green shaded region on the Venn diagram. So I've placed the number 18 in this region. And those people that own a car but no bike totals 42 and is represented by the green shaded region on the Venn diagram. So this means they're exclusively car owners. So I've placed the number 42 in this region. And we can also see from the table of data that those people owning a bike but not a car is equal to 27. And this is represented by the green shaded region. So these are exclusively bike owners, and I've placed the number 27 here. So part A asks us to find the probability of owning a bicycle. So for this, we can sum the numbers that represent bike owners. So in this case, 27 and 18. So we add these together, and we divide by the total in the sample space, which is 100. And this gives us a probability of 0.45. And for part B, we're asked to find the probability of a randomly selected person owning a bicycle given that they own a car. So they definitely own a car. And we have a formula for this. So it's the probability of the intersection between bike and car divided by the probability of owning a car. So this is conditional probability, where our sample space shrinks because we definitely know that they're car owners. So the probability of owning a car and a bicycle is the intersection of the two. So it's this number here divided by the total in the sample space. So we have 18 divided by 100. And we need to divide this by the probability of owning a car. So the total number owning a car is 42 plus 18, which comes to 60. And we need to divide this by the total in the sample space, which is 100. And this gives us a total probability of 3/10, or 0.3. And in part C of the question, we're asked to determine, showing our workings, whether owning a car and owning a bicycle are independent. Well, if these two events were independent, then the probability of owning a bicycle, given that we already own a car, would equal the probability that we own a bicycle. And we've worked out the probability of owning a bicycle, given that we already own a car, which is 0.3. And we've calculated the probability of owning a bicycle, which is 0.45. And as we can see, these numbers are different, and therefore the events are not independent.